Hey guys, it's your favorite sisters with the Confessions of a Reluctant Caregiver podcast. On the show, you'll hear caregivers confessing the good, the bad, and the completely unexpected. You're guaranteed to relate, be inspired, lead with helpful tips and resources, and of course, laugh. Now, let's get to today's confession. It's your birthday. Happy birthday. It's your birthday. Happy birthday to you. Oh, it's your birthday. Happy birthday. Okay. I know. Kelsey's dancing too.
I'm getting into it.
I know, right? So one of our favorite things that we do, just so that you know, as sisters, is that we all compete to call each other first. Mm-hmm. And so I hope that my youngest sister, Emily, did not call JJ before I did, but I knew I was going to up my game this year by singing happy birthday to you, JJ, because I love you.
So let me just note this really fast before we get started. So this morning when I talked to you early, I was hurt because you did not sing the birthday song to me.
I was waiting.
Because you always do. And then as I was getting on this call and you were changing my name, Kelci, I said to myself, she is going to sing the birthday song
on air
podcast. I'm going to be able to listen to that to infinity and beyond.
We have over 300,000 downloads a month, and 300,000 people are going to be like, she turned 51.
Oh, you didn't have to toss that out. Okay, today,
everybody, we have an amazing guest. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for allowing us some leeway to let me sing happy birthday to Jay, because her birthday is technically, this is being recorded on August the 5th. That is JJ's birthday. So, but you know what? Let's stop messing around. We are privileged to have Kelci Jager, not Jagger, no relation to Mick Jagger, on the podcast. Jay, I want you to tell everybody about our bestie, Kelci.
We have had to reschedule Kelci, I believe, 3 times.
We love her.
The last time was due to my dog. I mean, if you ever are scheduled for something and the host says, I can't because I got to rush my dog to the vet, that is a heart of a good person, Kelci.
That is a heart. She's clearly a caregiver. She gets it.
That's right. The dog is fine.
I'm so glad. And I have 2 puppies myself, so I get it.
Well, let me tell everybody about you, Kelci. Today we have Kelci Jager with us, and she is a certified life coach. She's a grief coach. She's a registered nurse, and she's the author of the book, A Million Miracles and the One That Never Came. And that book came from a place of grief for her. Her 40-year-old husband, who had a 559-day battle with leukemia. She was left to pick up the pieces after he passed of a shattered life as a solo parent to their 4 sons and faced the fear of her children losing her too. However, her determination to rise and thrive became her driving force. And I love that, Kelci.
Rise and thrive.
Because you definitely have a driving force. We are so happy to have you here.
Yay!
Thank you. Thank you. So good to be here. It was definitely worth the wait.
Oh, fantastic.
Thank
it was
you. I know. I meant to be on The Voice. I know.
Yeah, it was.
I know.
So Natalie always starts and says,
start from the beginning. Oh. You were born, and then just fast forward. So give us some background, because I need all the color. I need to understand where we're going to get where we the caregiving part.
Okay. So my husband and I, Colin, we met pretty young. I was in nursing school at San Diego State University, and he had just graduated high school when we met. So I was 20, he was 18, and we were at a young single adult activity at a church, and I saw him from across the room, and I was like, dang, who is that? He definitely caught my eye.
Love that.
He definitely caught my eye, and he was surrounded, no surprise, by probably a dozen girls. And I was like, well, I'm not going to compete with those girls. He's probably a player. Anyways, so I did not meet him that night. Our eyes met a couple of times across the room, but I was like, if he wants to talk to me, he's going to have to come over here and talk to me. We did not meet that night.
Even at a church function.
But yes. But then a week later, I saw him at another gathering. And that night, he did come up and introduce himself to me. And so he got my phone number because I told him that me and my girlfriends were moving from our apartment into a house that weekend. And he's like, do you need help moving? And I was like, of course we do. So
I'm sorry.
Yes. So he got our number. Back then, it was before, this is dating how old I am. It was before like everyone had cell phones. So we had a landline for the apartment. So he got the landline for the apartment. The next day he called and I answered the phone and I said, hello. And he said, hi, who's this? And I was like, excuse me, you called me. Who is this? And he said, this is Colin. And I immediately changed. I was like, oh, hi, Colin. Oh.
Like a pitch that only dogs can hear, right? A pitch only dogs.
Yes.
Hi.
Yes.
Hi.
So he was calling to like set up the details for our move, but really I found out later he was calling to ask me out on a date, which he did. We went on a date and then we were pretty much inseparable from there. We were married in 2003. We had 4 boys and our life was really, we had our struggles, but it really was picture perfect. You know, it couldn't have gotten much better. And we started a business together. So we worked together, we played together. He really, really was my best friend. And in 2019, we felt a deep pull that we needed to move to Florida. And it was kind of scary, it was a lot scary because we, like I said, we had our own business. So we kind of could go wherever we wanted, but we didn't know Florida. We didn't have any family there. We didn't have any friends there, but we just felt this deep pull that we needed to move. So listening to this prompting, we met with a realtor. We booked a flight out to Florida, just him and I. We told everybody we were going on a business trip. And he and I met with the realtor in Florida. And that trip, we bought a lot, signed a contract to build a home in Florida. So it was super crazy, super scary. But a year later, so right before COVID, we moved our family across the country from Southern California to Florida.
How old were your boys then, Kelci?
Let's see. My oldest was 15. And my youngest was in first grade. So he was 6.
That's a span.
He was 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a big span, the boys.
It was really scary, but we made the move. COVID happened and, we all know what happened there. We were very happy to be in Florida and not in Southern California during that time because where we live, there's a lot of forest and biking trails and stuff. So we could get outside and do things. Yeah. And so we were just kind of riding that COVID shutdown wave like everybody else. And then tragedy struck and our 2 oldest boys were in a motor vehicle accident. And the details of that accident, they were with some friends. It was probably like 9:45 at night. I just talked to them on the phone because they were supposed to be home around 9:30. And I was like, where are you guys? And they're like, we're just down the street. We're almost there. We just stopped at the pool real quick, the pool in our neighborhood. We just stopped at the pool real quick. We're going to be home. And it was raining outside. It was a summer storm. It was in the summer. And I was like, okay. I went started getting ready for bed. I heard some chaos out in the living room. And I was like, oh, the boys are home. I have 4 boys. So there's chaos is not uncommon in my house. But then I noticed quickly that the tone of the chaos was different. And I heard my husband yell, "Kelci, let's go." And so I didn't know what was going on. I just grabbed my phone and started running out the door. And they were, 20 feet ahead of me running down the driveway. And I'm like, "What's going on? What's happening?" And he said the boys were in an accident. So they were in an accident actually just 3 doors down from our house. So we were able to run there. There were 6 kids in the accident. I'm triaging all the kids. It's dark. It's raining. My son, Luca, was for sure the most injured in the accident. And I could tell right away. So once I got all the kids triaged and more help came, I rushed Luca and my son, Ian, who hit his head, to the emergency room. Again, this is in COVID. So my husband couldn't come with us. They were only allowing one parent. Plus we had 2 other little guys at home. So he stayed back with them. Yeah. So I'm in the emergency room with my 2 boys. And I knew Luca had broken bones. He had road rash up and down his body. I knew that he was going to need some treatment. Ian, I wasn't so sure. He hit his head. He was had symptoms of a head injury, but we didn't know the extent of it. So they did a brain CT. And during that brain CT, we discovered that he actually had a brain tumor that he had no previous signs or symptoms of at all.
Wow.
So as you can imagine, I'm in the emergency room and I've got one kid rushing off to surgery for broken bones and trauma, and another kid getting rushed off for a brain tumor. And I'm just kind of sitting there like, what the heck is going on? And that really turned my world upside down. Like I said, we had experienced hard things before, but not like this. This almost broke me, but I had my husband to help me through. My husband was my anchor. And together, like when I would break down and be like, this is too much, this is too hard, I don't know how we're going to get through this, he was my anchor there to support me, to be like, we're going to get through this, everything's going to be okay. And that's what I was for him, vice versa. And we did get through it. Thankfully, my son's brain tumor was benign. Thankfully, the neurosurgeon was able to remove the entire tumor. So it was a lot of just rehab after that, because he did have major brain surgery, and then a lot of rehab for my son for trauma. And so fast forward 4 months, it's the end of 2020 now. And I'm like, let's close the door on 2020. This year has just been horrible. Yeah. So January 2nd, 2021, my husband ended up in the emergency room, and he had been experiencing some chest pain for a few weeks before that, but it wasn't like cardiac chest pain. It was more like muscle chest pain. He and we had a routine where we'd go to the gym every morning before we started work. So we'd go to the gym together, and we thought maybe he had just overexerted himself or something. But on January 2nd, he spiked a fever. His pain was getting worse. And I was like, you need to go to the emergency room. Like, we need to find out what's going on. He drove himself to the emergency room because he thought it was just going to be like a quick thing.
It's no big deal. Don't even worry about it.
Yes. And I was like, are you sure I can take you? He's like, no, it's fine. So I was like checking in with him, and he was keeping me updated. Like, they got me in right away. Send me a text. I just saw the doctor. They're ordering some labs. And then it was radio silence. And I'm texting him, no response. I'm calling him, no response. And now I'm starting to panic. And I'm like, what is going on? And so I called the emergency room. Now he's been gone for a couple of hours, and his nurse answered. And she said, I'm so glad you called me, because he didn't write down any emergency contact information. So we didn't have your information. Typical, no offense to any men that are listening, but that's kind of a typical man thing to do. I was like, what do you mean you didn't write down any emergency information? So anyways, she said he took a turn for the worse, and he is admitted. We don't know what's wrong with him. visiting hours are over with now because they were small. They had a smaller window because of COVID. And she said, you can come in the morning. And so I was calling him. He's not answering. I don't know what's going on. I'm freaking out. I'm there the second I can be there the next morning. And the next 7 days, the doctors did so many tests to try to figure out what was going on with him. And everything was coming up fine. But he was getting sicker. His labs were all over the place, and he was in a ton of pain. They couldn't figure out what was wrong with him. As a nurse, I was drilling them about everything. Finally, I demanded that they get oncology on board, and they were like, okay, fine, but this isn't like an oncology thing. And I was like, well, we've checked with everything else, so let's check with oncology. Come to find out, it was acute lymphoblastic leukemia, which is an aggressive form of blood cancer.
I'm gonna stop you right there.
Yeah.
Because we're going to take a break. And then we're going to come right back and we're going to go into this, because what I heard you say, though, is like you started because you're a nurse. And so you already know how to advocate, but now you're advocating in a different way because you're the mama, you're the wife, you're turning. This is the time that you added a new role, really. And you added caregiver. We'll be right back. I don't know about you, but my inbox is always cluttered with useless emails. But there's one I always open, the Confessions of a Reluctant Caregiver newsletter. You may say, Natalie, what makes yours so special? Well, I'm biased, but don't just take my word for it. Here's what our subscribers say they love. First, it comes once per month, and you can read it in under 5 minutes. Next, you'll find amazing tips and resources to use in your everyday life. And who doesn't love a recommendation? These sisters do, which is why we share sister-approved products and discount links to save you time and money. And of course, you're first to know about the upcoming month's confessions. Just like our show, you're guaranteed to relate, be inspired, leave with helpful tips and resources, and of course, laugh. Go to our website, confessionsofAreluctantcaregiver.com, to sign up for our newsletter today.
Hey everybody, we are back here with Kelci Jager, and she's gone through a lot. Her boys were in an accident at one point in 2020, two of her two oldest, and 4 months later, her husband is in the emergency room. He's been admitted and has finally been diagnosed with blood cancer. And that was after she said, Natalie, she advocated and said, I need for you to bring in oncology, because obviously the other doctors weren't doing it.
So let's keep picking up. So you go through this and you get the diagnosis. Now what's happening? Because now you've turned into a caregiver. You've got 4 boys. And what does life become for you and change?
It was reversed back to when my boys got in their accident. Our community, because we didn't have any family, all our family was on the West Coast. We had no family by us. And because of COVID, it wasn't easy for them to travel to come and help us. So thankfully, our community really rallied around us, and they were bringing us meals. They were watching our kids. They were, cleaning our house, doing our laundry, whatever needed to be done. They would just come in and do it. And I kind of was like, wait, whoa, hang on. You don't want to be the classic phrase, I don't want to be a burden. But at that time, I didn't have a choice. I had 2 kids in the hospital and 2 more kids at home that needed to be taken care of. So I didn't have a choice. Now, when my husband was in the hospital, when he was admitted in the emergency room and they were doing tests, they didn't know what was wrong with him. My community rallied again. And one of my neighbors down the street said, do you want me to start a meal train again? And I said these specific words to her. No, I do not want to be the neighborhood service project. I don't want our family to be the neighborhood service project. No, do not start a meal train. This is just something that's acute. We're going to figure it out, and then we're going to be home and we'll be fine. Now, when we got the diagnosis, I knew that Yeah, I'm not an oncology nurse. I was a pediatric intensive care nurse. I took care of patients that had leukemia. I knew that this was going to be a really long road. And so one of the first things I did was text my neighbor that offered to start up the meal train. And I said, you can start the meal train. We're going to need help.
Oh.
And so I have always been a very, I'll figure it out. You know, I'm resilient, I'm strong, confident person. When this happened, just on the heels of the trauma from my boys, that all went out the window. And I completely shattered into a million pieces. I couldn't be there for my husband. I couldn't be there for my kids. I was putting everybody else before me, and it caught up with me, and I couldn't get out of bed. And here's my husband in the hospital getting a PICC line, starting chemo, like getting all these things, you know, getting a bone marrow biopsy, getting all these invasive things happening to him in the hospital. And I could not get out of bed to be there with him. And that absolutely tore me apart. But I could not get out of bed because I was so broken. And at one point, my kids would come into the room and check on me. And one point I was able to get out of bed, and I think I was getting a drink of water or something. And my second youngest son, who was, I think he was 10 or 11 at the time, he said, "Mom, are you eating?" And I was so anxious and so stressed that I couldn't eat. Like, eating made me feel so nauseous. And I said, "I'm trying, buddy." And he said, "Because Mom, I'm worried about you. You look like you're wasting away." And that was really a wake-up call for me. Like, you are just sitting here feeling sorry for yourself, feeling sorry, you know, in this victim mode. Like, why is all of this happening? Woe is me. Woe is our family. And your kids are losing both their parents, and you can control if they lose you. And so I really, I didn't know how I was going to push forward, but I knew I had no other choice but to figure it out. And like I said, I had no idea how I was going to do it, but I just had the belief that it was possible. And just that belief was enough for me to take the next little step. And that's what we really need to do in grief. And when we're caregivers and everything just seems so overwhelming, is that we have to shorten our lens. If we look too wide, if our lens is too wide, if we look at all the things we have to do or all the things that, you know, might happen in the future, it consumes us and it breaks us. So we have to shorten our lens and just look at, what do I need in this moment? And what is my next step right here? And that's really how I kind of was able to move forward from there. The other thing was, and I talk about this in my book, is there was so much darkness. And of course, everyone around me is like, I can't imagine. And I can't, like, how are you still standing? And, you know, and they're being empathetic, but it's also like, this is, I am a victim. Like, this is horrible. And so, like, you do need that witness, but it also, you have to be careful because you can easily get like wrapped into that victim mentality and story. So what I started doing was to counteract that, was I started looking for all the things that were going right, all the things that we still had, where there were so many little tender mercies and blessings. Yes, everything was falling apart, but my community rallying around me. I still had my kids. My husband had such a great attitude. Like he was like, I'm going to beat this. And he, like there were so many still good things. And it was really, I had to actively look for the light because it was so much easier to just get sucked into the darkness. But the darkness was keeping me in bed. And so when I looked through the light, that is what would be able to push me forward to be able to do all the things that I needed to do.
Wow. I'm like, go on. Because you're right. You're so right. It's so right that you can go into a victim mode. Because I'm going to tell you, Kelci, when Jason was diagnosed, I'm just like, seriously, haven't we had enough? He's already had back and neck issues. He felt like a victim. And it was easy. And I'm sitting there thinking, I didn't sign up for this. Like we'd been together 11 years and 3 months after we get married, he's not able to work because he has this back injury. And so he can't work. And so I'm like, okay, so now it's solely on me. And then we get cancer. Like he gets cancer, but I counted it. I'm like, and really, what did I do? And I totally agree that it's like you can go into those modes and float into them and be like, I'm just going to walk around the city and pretend like I'm just, Sarah Jessica Parker, Sex in the City. I'm just going to pretend like I'm going to pretend. And you're right. If you swim in that darkness, you can totally get sucked in. It can be really hard to get out.
Yes. And I want to be very clear that I'm not talking about toxic positivity. I'm not talking about ignoring the pain, ignoring the hard. It is crucial to acknowledge that and to give it space, but it's also crucial to acknowledge and give space to what still remains.
Yeah.
It's an and, it's not an either or.
So, Kelci, let me ask you this, because your life is totally disrupted. And it, as you said, it's fallen apart. Are you still working? Your kids are going to school. I mean, is this how your village pulls together to at least get your kids to school?
Yeah. So, like I said, we had our own business. So my husband was the president of the company. So I had to kind of step in and take over that role. My kids were in school. They were on sports teams, and I tried very, very, very hard to not disrupt their life as much as I could control. And so, thankfully we have a village. I wouldn't have been able to continue doing the things that I did without our village. But in that same breath, I had to swallow my pride and let that village come in and help us.
That you're right, because I think especially for certain personalities, there is a pride piece to it, and you have to. I totally feel that way. Allowing other people to help you, and allowing for, I think it's don't allow great to be, great be the enemy of good. Like if you don't do it the same way, it's still fine.
Yes.
It's, like, hey.
Yes. And that is so me. I have like type A personality, super, like I like to be in control. I like things done a certain way. And I had to just release all of that, which in hindsight, if I didn't, I don't think I would have been able to survive. Like it was survival for me. I had to relinquish control, and I had to get really clear on the things that I could control and the things that I couldn't. And the things that I could control, I would hang on to those. And that actually would give me kind of a sense of purpose and kind of a sense of direction. So I didn't feel like I was just kind of like flailing and just wandering around lost. But then I had to let go of all the things that I couldn't control. And that is so much harder than it seems. But I needed to do that for survival.
Did you ever have moments where you questioned your parenting? Like, am I good enough? Because you're a sandwich. At this point, you're caregiver for your husband. You're still the mama. Am I doing a good job? Did you ever those moments of doubt? Like, I'm not have the connection with my boys. I don't feel like I'm giving them enough attention. Somebody else is like, I don't know. I'm just throwing these things out there. Did you ever have those moments as a mama?
Absolutely. And I still do. I still feel like I am maybe not enough, or, I'm failing them in some way. And when my husband was sick, if it didn't deal with life or death, it was very low on my priority list because my husband was dying. And the medical care system, as great as his doctors and nurses were, we were in the middle of COVID. So everything was kind of like the nurses had too many patients, and, the doctors were overtired, and everything was just stretched. And so I felt like I needed to be there. I couldn't be there 24/7 because they wouldn't let me because of the COVID hours. But as long as I could be there, I felt like I needed to be there. And when I wasn't there, I was constantly checking his labs on the patient portal. And I was calling the nurses and saying, did you check his blood sugar? Did he get his insulin? Like, all these things, because I didn't feel like he was getting the care that he needed. And so I really, really, really had to advocate for him. And so obviously there's only so much energy I can expend in a day. And so, of course, my boys kind of, got shafted. They were just kind of got whatever was left over, which wasn't a whole lot. And the doctors and nurses used to ask me, because I was always at the hospital, who's at home with your kids? And I'd be like, oh, it's like Lord of the Flies in my house. They're just kind of taking care of themselves, which they weren't. Colin's mom was flying in and out. My mom was flying in and out. We had neighbors and friends that were checking in, bringing them dinners. They weren't completely alone. But sometimes I would come home and I'd be like, oh, wow, it is like Lord of the Flies here. It's like these poor kids are they're just kind of flailing on their own. So yeah, there was a lot of just kind of beating myself up and doubt. And I still do that today.
I'm going to take a break real quick because we're going to come back. I appreciate the Lord of the Flies reference, but it doesn't mean that it's a CPS complaint though either. So I'm going to come right back.
They were well cared for.
They were still taken care of.
Yes.
So I'm going to qualify that because we're doing a caregiving youth series right now, and your oldest son, I would say, was probably caring for the youngers, and they were taking care.
He
of
was
each
16.
Other.
He was
JJ took care of us at 10, and we turned out fine. So we'll be right back. Do you love to listen to podcasts? So do we. And these sisters are excited to support our fellow sister in care, Nicole Will, host of Navigating the World with Your Aging Loved One. As former guests ourselves, we love how Nicole explores the world of aging and care. Beyond the informative interviews, Nicole's gathered helpful resources and practical tools that encourage and give hope to caregivers navigating the aging journey with their loved ones for a more meaningful and fulfilled life. You can find Nicole wherever you download your favorite podcast or go to her website, www.willgather.com.
Hey everybody, so we're back here with Kelci Jager, and we have gotten to the point where she is realizing that she's doing the best she can, I guess is the way, as I listen to it. Her boys are at home. Kelci, I want to talk about 559 days, because you point that out in your bio, and a book that you wrote, A Million Miracles and the One That Never Came. I want to talk about time, and I want to talk about Colin, your best friend, and how you dealt with this time that you had left, and gaining peace and getting to where you are today.
Yeah. So in my book, A Million Miracles and the One That Never Came, I talked earlier about looking for the light, and the light are those miracles. And there were so many miracles along the way that happened. And in my book, I journal about those miracles. I journal about our struggles. In my book, the book starts on day 1, which was January 2nd, 2021. And the book goes through those 559 days that he battled leukemia. And then it goes to a little bit after that in our life after loss. But my husband is so amazing that he was uplifting and inspiring every single person that came into his room. He was the light in the darkness so many of the days. And it wasn't unusual for a doctor or a nurse or a janitor or the person that brought in the food. I mean, he knew everybody's name. He knew about their family. He knew their likes and dislikes. He took the time when he was feeling horrible, he took the time to get to know other people. And that just gives you a little bit of an idea of the kind of person that he is. And so those entire 558 days, I'll say 558, he was convinced that he was going to beat this and that he was going to get that final miracle that we prayed so fervently for. And it wasn't until day 558 when the doctors came in and said, "I'm so sorry. There's nothing more that we can do." It wasn't until that day that he finally was like, okay, there's no more hope. And he wasn't scared. He was sad because he didn't want to leave us. And I know he was worried. I know he was worried about how we were going to be after he was gone. And I promised him on day 559, hours before he passed, I promised him that we would be okay. And I didn't know at that time that I was going to be able to keep that promise. I didn't know how I was going to keep that promise, but I knew he needed to hear it. And I know I needed to hear it too. And, as caregivers, we need to serve as compassionate witnesses to our loved ones. And if you think of a child who falls down and gets hurt, their first instinct is to look at their caregiver to gauge the severity of the situation through the adult's reaction. And our presence and composure convey a powerful message. And so that was the last gift I could give to him, was to be compassionately witnessing of him and his situation and his pain, and stay calm in the face of suffering and silently communicate, "I see your pain and I'm here for you, and you're going to be able to do this, and we are going to be able to do this, and we'll be okay." And so cancer had taken so much from me. And, I experienced so much grief when my boys got in their accident and the brain tumor, and then with his diagnosis and the 559 days that he fought, there was so much grief. But after he died, it was a new level of grief. Mm. And I could have easily, again, like after his diagnosis, got sucked into that. But cancer had taken so much already that I refused to let it take anymore. And my husband, Colin, he deserves to have his legacy be so much more than that his death broke me. Mm. And so that is my motivation. That is my passion. And that is the gift that I want to give to the world as a grief coach, to help others who are suffering from loss, to show them that you don't have to stay in the darkness. Your life doesn't have to be black and white from now on. You can bring back the color and the light.
Mm. Oh, that just Kelci, that touches my heart. I like that you can bring back the color. That resonates with me because life feels very black and white when you're in a state of crisis and you can't see around you. You can't see color. It just feels very dark. And I love that. I think that we always wonder why God gives us why does God give us these things in our lives? Why take my husband? Why take someone so wonderful? Why, he was a good person. None of us are perfect, but he was a good person. But I mean, I have to think, you've taken something and you're helping so many more people. I just can't say how important that is because somebody needed to hear today, you can see color again.
You really can. So. And I know it seems when you're in the thick of it, it seems like that's impossible. And well, maybe that works for you, but my loss is different. It's not going to work for me. And everybody's loss is different, but you get to decide if you're going to bring the color back or not. It's not going to passively happen. You have to actively work and seek it out. And if you don't know how to do it, I can show you how.
I'm jotting. I have so many people. I look down. JJ and I look down, Kelci, and I'm just jotting down so many like nuggets of wisdom. I don't even have to ask you what your tips are. I don't have to ask you how did you survive. I mean, you just in your story, you're like, it's this shameless, unashamed honesty. Which is so hard for caregivers, I think, is to be unashamed and be vulnerable and to say, I need help and to allow the village to surround you, uncomfortably surround you is what I heard you say. Almost like, I don't want to, and know that and you allowed your children to step up. It is a reflection of your and Colin's parenting and the village that love them too. I think they're going to be probably pretty amazing little humans.
They are pretty amazing. Sometimes they drive me nuts.
That's exactly what they're supposed to. They're boys or girls.
I think I probably drive them nuts sometimes too. So
okay.
It's okay. It's a well balanced relationship.
You know what? I love that.
I'm going to use my question because I know we have
time
the sister questions. I know.
We have to ask these questions.
I know. I'm going to use mine to ask a tip question, but we have a lot of people that listen that have kids like you do. And they are saying they do the best they can. They're doing the best they can, but there's guilt. They're being a caregiver, but they have guilt or they're not taking care of their kids well enough. Or what advice would you give a parent that is taking care of their own parents or someone else and have children? What advice would you give to them?
I would say, and this is really hard to do, especially as parents, but you have to fill your own cup first because you want to be the best version you could possibly be for your kids. So not in spite of your kids, you're not pushing your kids' needs away, but you're putting your needs first so that you can then tend to your children's needs.
That's good.
That's sage words of wisdom. Yeah. Because think about the airplane. They say if you're traveling with a minor, put your oxygen mask on first so that you can take care of the little one.
Exactly.
So telling you, we need like an airline to sponsor us, but give us all kinds of free oxygen masks because that's what we should give away. I've got my last question for you. And this is a selfish question because I think this is important. I always like to end on this one is what is your favorite guilty pleasure? What is the thing that you do for yourself? And because it goes into what you said, fill your cup first. What is the thing that you do for yourself that you're like, that is the thing I love to do?
I get a 2-hour massage at least once a month.
I support you.
That's a great thing. Oh,
I support that. I support that in so many ways. Oh, thank God. I'm thinking about the Norwegian cruise that we're doing and I'm getting a massage. I might get a massage every day just for good measure. Just saying that.
I mean, I wouldn't advise against it. I actually have a 2-hour. Yes, I have a 2-hour massage scheduled tomorrow. And so I'm looking forward to that.
Timely, girl. Timely.
I have to say that I have learned a lot, but you saying that you have to actively look for the light is something that is what I take with me today. That I have to work on bringing that color, because sometimes it's hard, and I know for listeners it's hard too.
It's really hard.
But that is like something that you put on a sticky note every day. You say, I'm actively looking for the light today. I'm going to look for the good, because you can. There's stuff that can drag you down, but you just actively look for it. You find the joy, I guess, as I have a friend that says, you got to find the joy. Choose your joy. I choose joy. So.
And we're not finding the joy to try to like dismiss the pain.
Absolutely not.
Like the grief and the sorrow and the pain can coexist with the joy and the happiness. And I will tell you this, the more, it's like a practice. So the more you look for the light, the easier it becomes to recognize. The more you do it, the easier it becomes and the more light you'll see.
Man. And this translates, Kelci, to a lot of things. This is not just if you're a caregiver. This translates to all aspects of your life.
Yes.
When you're struggling and you're having a hard time, whether it's at work or whether it's with you're in an argument, or it's something that challenges you, that faces you, that really kind of puts you at this crossroad of, is it going to crumble me or am I going to thrive? And how do I, and that's how you build resilience. You build your own resilience through the hard. And you're right. The more you look for the light, I think the more that you're able to say, okay, I can manage this hard thing, and both things can be true.
Exactly.
I can be happy, and I can be not happy about the situation.
Exactly. Exactly.
Man, gosh, Kelci, I love you. I'm so glad you are meant to come today. I love
Thank you for being here on my birthday.
Oh,
I'm so honored to be here on your birthday. Thank you for spending your birthday with me.
Anytime, every year, we'll make it like an annual retreat.
Like, Kelci's back. It's JJ's birthday. We're having Kelci back. Let's talk about
it. Sounds perfect. I'm in.
Oh, I love it. I love it. All right. Well, guys, thank you so much, Kelci. Thank you for coming on. And guys, until we confess again, we will see you next time. Well, friends, that's a wrap on this week's confession. Again, thank you so much for listening. But before you go, please take a moment to leave us a review and tell your friends about the Confessions podcast. Don't forget to visit our website to sign up for our newsletter. You'll also find a video recording of all of our episodes on the Confessions website and our YouTube channel. Don't worry, all the details are included in the show notes below. We'll see you next Tuesday when we come together to confess again. Till then, take care of you. Okay, let's talk disclaimers. You may be surprised to find out, but we are not medical professionals and are not providing any medical advice. If you have any medical questions, we recommend that you talk with a medical professional of your choice. As always, my sisters and I at Confessions of a Reluctant Caregiver have taken care in selecting the speakers, but the opinions of our speakers are theirs alone. The views and opinions stated in this podcast are solely those of the contributors and not necessarily those of our distributors or hosting company. This podcast is copyrighted, and no part can be reproduced without the express written consent of the Sisterhood of Care, LLC. Thank you for listening to the Confessions of a Reluctant Caregiver podcast.